On today's episode of Locked On 76ers, the Sixers improved to 31-16 after downing the rival Brooklyn Nets. Ben Simmons came back to town. What took place on Wednesday night? We'll talk about it next, right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook on Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com, Locked On today to get started. What's up, D?
What's going on, man? I guess the red hot, well, not super red hot, but red hot Sixers is what's up, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was funny when you said you lead in the rivalry. It was like, man, both sides wanted that smoke last night. I mean, it was crazy, dude.
It was nuts with the physicality, so much, and we figured it would be again really, really hype, and that's why it was such a big matchup. And hey, that's why I was part of Rivalry Week on ESPN to have them on national TV the way that they did, because it lived up to it. And Sixers did their part early to make it really difficult on Brooklyn, but Brooklyn didn't quit, came back. You got 6 technical fouls, Keith. That was, and it's 7 if you include the 3 seconds, but that's not really on anybody. But 6 technical fouls, man. A couple of them from barking at each other, and it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, it was. You see how Embiid stepped the Claxton though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? He like went up on him, dude. And it was funny because Claxton was like, he turned his head like the opposite direction. And Embiid was like he was adamant. Like, I mean, he was going like, you know what I mean? He wasn't like but he had some like intent on his face, like, yo, you ain't going to disrespect me. I was like, oh man, this
with Claxton.
Yeah, and this was in the first quarter.
Yeah, he was like, I'm not, you're not scaring me, so keep on talking. Go ahead. Because I was able to read his lips since I wasn't at the game for this one. I was back at the studio since I had to do the post-game work and all. And you could read his lips when they showed the replay, and he was like, man, go sit down. But he was saying, man, go sit your bleep down. Go sit your bleep down. And then Joel was like, say it to my face. That's why he walked up into his face. And he was like, go sit your bleep down. So he didn't back down. He wasn't afraid of Joel in that case. But it was fun, man. It was all good fun. And this is what we talk about with Rivalry Week. And these guys are not going to go away. They didn't have Kevin Durant. The next time they play is the 11th. We'll see if Kevin Durant is going to be available for that one. But this one certainly, again, did live up to the expectation. First of all, before we get deeper into it, because there's a lot to talk about, we got to welcome everybody to Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Gibbons from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner, as always, Keith Pompey from theinquirer.com. We want to thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including right here on YouTube at Locked On 76ers. Well, we got to talk about the game in general. A 4-point win for the Sixers at home, 137-133. We'll get into all of that. We'll talk about Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and did that one-on-one battle that we got really early live up to it, and also the decline of Ben Simmons. Normally we don't talk much about the opponent in that way, but it's hard not to when you're talking about the former number 1 overall pick from 2016, a building block for this team, a foundational piece for this team. And this was the first time that he had a chance to face up and match up against his former teammate in Joel Embiid, that those two were the faces of the franchise and expected to lead this team deep into the future. But Keith, hey, man, 137-133, and you just talked about the physicality with this one. It was the 6th win of the season. Let's just start here. 6 win in a row for the Sixers. It's the league best 6 win in a row right now for the team. They are 19-4 in their last 23 games. The Sixers are. They are second in the Eastern Conference, 3 games back of the Boston Celtics. Still a half a game up on Milwaukee because they beat Denver last night in their matchup, the Sixers' next opponent. And the Sixers shot over 50%. The defense relinquished over 60% for the Brooklyn Nets. But they were able to walk away with this one. How did they get it done? What were your overall takeaways from this one? Again, Wednesday was fun. What was the building like?
I mean, the building was crazy. I mean, it was funny because the thing that it was funny because there was like a Brooklyn Nets section and section 217. There was a bunch of Brooklyn Nets fans and they were chanting Brooklyn.
I saw this before the game. They had a traveling party.
Yeah. And it was they were vocal, they were loud. It was funny though, but the Philly fans caught on quick. Like they would chant Ben Simmons, like Ben Simmons, right? And then after they did it, the second time they did it, the Philly crowd will respond, sucks. They were like, sucks, right? So that was crazy.
They set him up basically.
yeah. It was. I was like, yo, but it was a great atmosphere, man. And like, I get it. Brooklyn shot 64% from the field. Brooklyn did a lot of things, but I came away thinking it was a good win. I mean, I did. I mean, you looked at Maxey. Maxey had what 27 points. You look at Embiid. I think Embiid had a poor shooting night. He was only 2 for 7 in the second half. Right? He was too emotional.
He was 4 for 11 in the first half.
Yeah. But we'll get more into that. But to me, I felt like James Harden stepped up and he did what he was supposed to do. And you kind of forget that he's, is going to go down as one of the greatest players. And that's weird because we asked him, hey, man, like, talk about those shots. And he's like looking at us and he'll answer. But it's like, dude, I've been making stuff like this in my career. This is who I am. Huh?
Yeah, well, this is what I've done.
Yeah, this is what I've done. So, but I still think that was a good win. Like you said, they're 31-16, 6-game winning streak, 3 games behind the Boston Celtics right now. And this is coming from a guy, me, who thought they weren't in their class. You thought they were, but I didn't. And right now they're showing that they are. They're playing well. And I felt like that. I know Kevin Durant didn't play, but I felt like the 76ers really showed up and played well.
Yeah, they did. They earned the win, and we know that as we always talk about, basketball is a game of runs, and there were a bunch of runs in this game. There was an 8-0 run by the Sixers in the fourth quarter that was countered by the Nets with the 8-0 run themselves. I think it was 116-102 off the top of my head that the Sixers had with the 8-0 run, and then the Nets just came right back, bang. Next thing you know, it's 110 to 106, and partly because of Seth Curry and his hot shooting, by the way, led all scorers with 32 points. This was a fun one. This was a fun back and forth. The Sixers had a lead up to about 17, and the Nets just wouldn't go away. Then they had a 16-4 run late to eventually take the lead from the Sixers. And the Sixers came right back and took it back again in that fourth quarter, where the shooting was hot, the passing was crisp, some breakdowns on defense, but with all the emotions that were into it. And Doc Rivers talked about it late last night with his post-game availability and how he didn't like how the team, and I know you spoke to him, you asked a couple of questions to him in the post-game availability, that he didn't like how the emotions just played into it all because it got the best of the Sixers. Now, he said they'll take the win, and you do take the win. It was a good win, but they have to learn how, Keith, to play with those emotions like that and not let it take over and get the best of them.
Yeah, but I agree with that 100%. But I also think that, and when he's not really trying to single a guy out, right? And he was even asked specifically, was it Embiid, right?
Everybody.
Talking about Embiid. He said everybody. It was Embiid. I mean, it was Embiid, and I also think the fact that, I mean, like you say, you weren't in the building, dude. It was like, you know how when you in the second or third grade, and it's like somebody going to fight in the schoolyard, like two tough dudes going to fight in the schoolyard, and everybody's like, ooh.
Yeah.
So like when Embiid got the ball and posted up Simmons, the whole arena was like, ooh.
I'll say this, even
Huh?
though I wasn't in there and I couldn't feel it like you, it came across the radio. It
Yeah,
came across the television. You saw the people stand up. You heard the
yep,
murmurs from the crowd on
yep,
our radio broadcast,
yep,
and it was nuts.
yep. And Embiid was like a wide out who got a wide open. He had a wide open. Would have been a wide open touchdown pass, but he's already thinking before he catches the ball. He's already thinking about his like celebration
Celebration, right?
dance,
Yeah,
and he fumbles it. And
yeah.
you know what I mean. So he kept doing that. You know what I mean. So so I think like this is a game that is good to get it out of your system, right? And if you notice, there was times when he started gradually being himself.
Mm-hmm.
But now Ben Simmons did a good job on him now too.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like I don't feel like when they go to Brooklyn and play, it's going to be this exciting. It's going to be this amped up for Embiid. I don't feel like if next year when Simmons comes back that Embiid is going to be this amped up. So I think this is a one that he'll get out of the system.
That's fair. The only counter I will have before we step away is he might look at it with just 26 points and how he played it, and we'll get into more of those two next, that he didn't do what he really wanted to do and then go and try to make that point the next time out, especially if Kevin Durant is there as the big brother to back up Ben Simmons in that case. We'll come back and we'll get into that matchup. Did that live up to the expectation and the hype? And I think you can tell based on how Keith was explaining how things went in the arena. Did that expectation live up to the hype? We'll talk about it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
The NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the number one sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy, right? New customers join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I mean, that's easy. $5 for 150, right? Just sign up at fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at bigger payout with the same game parlay, right? All this is on the app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Like I said earlier, place your first $5 bet and get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thank you for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast. Nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, man, let's get to it because Embiid did finish with 26 points on the night, struggled from the floor as we talked about. Ben Simmons, 12 points in the game, and didn't dominate the way that he typically does in other ways with his assists or his rebounds. Got into early foul trouble once again. He was scoreless in the first half. All of his points came in the second half. 10 in the quarter for him. 4 for 5 from the field. 2 made free throws out of 3 opportunities, and 2 points in the fourth quarter, Keith, before he was benched, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But do you feel like this one lived up to it, and why?
You're talking about the hype between the matchup?
Between those two, yeah.
Nah, I didn't feel like it. And I mean, I felt like because of what we talked about earlier, I think Embiid was a little bit too emotional. Like, I feel like if Embiid would have got him on a posterized, if Ben Simmons would have came down and did something on Embiid, blew past him, then we all would have said, wow. Because let's face it, they both have the ability to do both of that. Like, I mean, now Ben might not want to get to the foul line, but if you see Ben on in transition, you know Embiid could meet him at the rim. I mean, I'm not saying he's not. He can, but Ben Simmons has the ability to posterize people with his athleticism. But Embiid has the ability to dominate. And like as you said, Embiid was a little bit too emotional. You know what I mean? Too emotional, and it took away from it. Because when you look at it, when we walk away, you know, Embiid did struggle from the field, but he didn't score at all against Simmons. You know, he didn't. And at one play, Simmons blocked the shot. So, you know, yeah, so people could say, wow, he shut him down. But we all know that wasn't the Embiid that we're used to seeing. And I would like to see the Embiid we're used to seeing and see Ben. Now, one thing I will say about Ben, like, he just doesn't look the same. He just doesn't. And we'll, you know, he just, like, I don't know if the back is still bothering him or whatever, but he just doesn't look the same at all. I mean, like, he just doesn't. He looks like a role player as opposed to an all-star.
And like you said, we'll get into that in just a minute, but I do agree with you because we've seen it for so many years. We just know, and that's not him. But here's why I say, and you're not wrong, because when we talk about matchups like that, we expect when we have two people squaring up like that, to your point of the schoolyard fight and the two bullies are going to go at it, and you want to see a knockout, drag out one where these guys just stand up for the full 48 and go at it. And while they didn't give the numbers to do it, I thought that the hype and the theater that came with it lived up to it in that way. Even though the point totals of Embiid over his 33, Ben getting his normal 17, 9, and 8, and those type of spectacular plays, or even Ben being posterized by Joel. When you talk about the crowd reacting that way to it, and multiple times, not the first one was the first one, it wasn't going to be topped. But when we saw them matched up again, maybe a couple of possessions later, and you still get a pretty good one-on-one matchup there, and the crowd, again, the anticipation of it all, that's why I think it lived up to it, because of the storyline that it was of those two finally meeting up and be fighting for post position, telling somebody to clear out, to get out of the way so he can get that pass. He even looked like when the pass came, it was on that angle that Harden threw to him. He was on the right block, low block. Not really low because Ben had him pushed out a little bit away from the block, but Harden had to angle it for the pass, but he had to wait for his teammate, I believe it was DeAnthony Melton, to clear out and go to the other side of the floor and get the basketball. And you mentioned it. He was just too excited. He wanted to dominate him too much, put him through the floor too much on that particular possession and the others. And it just simply didn't go in the way that he would have wanted to. So in that case, you look at it and you say, you know what, Ben won, because Ben was under control in that case, and Joel was just too excited. And that's why I would say it lived up to it, because of all the anticipation and the theater that came with it. Points-wise, they still have to make up for that one. But in general, it lived up to it. It was fun.
Yeah, you raised a good point. So I'm looking at it like it was trash. But no, I hate to say it.
No,
like,
I know what you mean.
It's kind of like when you see, like, okay, let's look at the Cowboys 49ers game. They, like, that game, some people say that game was trash. It wasn't
19-12, right? Low scoring.
Right. But at the end of the day, it was an exciting,
good defensive battle, right?
Yeah. But we don't like seeing that. You know what I mean? You want to see the point. So
Ben on the one play when Embiid had caught the ball on his defender, it was a perfectly line pass, and the defender came from the backside along the baseline on the weak side to help out to try to tip it away. Embiid caught it. As he split them, he went for the two-handed dunk. Ben came in, and he got it, hung on the rim. We know Embiid doesn't typically hang on the rim. He hung on the rim because it was the Nets, and then Simmons came in. And although he didn't dunk on him, he was in the vicinity, and that's why he looked at him as they ran up the floor to let him know that he got him on that particular one. Even though it wasn't directly on him, he was close enough, and that was the point for Joel.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk about what Ben Simmons is now. As you said, he's not himself. It doesn't appear to be himself. We don't necessarily know why. We can't put a finger on it, but we at least have to talk about his game in general by himself, what he looked like last night. I saw his brother in the crowd on the front row underneath the baseline, and but it was a warm welcome once again for Ben Simmons in this one. We're talk about it next in this final segment of Locked On 76ers. Welcome back to Locked On 76ers. Keith Pompey, I'm Devon Givens with you, breaking down the Sixers Nets last night. Sixers win their sixth in a row. A fun matchup for rivalry week in the NBA started off with those two teams. Well, Keith, as you said, we were around Ben Simmons for his whole career from 2016 to 2022 before he was traded. And we know the player. And there's one thing that I talk about a lot, and it's funny. It's not saying that I know more than a lot of people, Keith, and others don't or can't just because they're not here. Sometimes you have a better sense of a player or a team, how they play, all those things, what makes them tick, what things go the wrong way because you're around them so much. And in this case, with us, with Ben Simmons, you even more than me, over the 5 years that he was here in town, 6 years that he was here in town, and looking at him, watching him from afar when he's not playing the Sixers and he's just playing. He does a lot of the same things that he did, but it's really, really, really with so much less aggression than even before. And I didn't even think that was possible, but that's what he's doing right now. He is averaging a career low, as you talked about in our previous podcast, 7 points. His rebounds and assists, while he'll have individual games where they'll be up, they're not the same as it used to be. His dribble handoffs, he's just looking to pass as soon as he touches the basketball and not even looking for a shot. In the third quarter, he was much more aggressive. I'm sure that was something that somebody got into his ear at halftime, and he turned into a different player, taking 5 shots in the third. But definitely not the same guy, Keith. And as we talk about things that stood out, what is it about him that you see that's different in Ben Simmons?
I mean, like you said, the lack of aggression. And it could be two things. It could be one of those things where he doesn't want to get fouled. But I also think that, I shouldn't say I think, I'm wondering, he's had a bad back and he's been dealing with that. And I'm wondering how much is he playing, how much pain is he playing in, and how much is that is hindering his mobility. Because Ben is a guy, his best attribute is his athleticism, right? He's just one of those dudes. And he just seems like he's not as mobile as he used to be. He's like a shell of himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a point where we were saying and they were telling us he was the fastest big guy in the league. Is he still? But I think a lot of that has to do with he's shooting 40-something% from the foul line. He doesn't want to get to the foul line, and B is just his back is bothering him. It's a one crazy stat, like not crazy stat, but you're right. The Sixers were blowing them out in the fourth quarter. And then Ben Simmons goes to the bench and they come back. Ben Simmons, as good as if we say he played against Joel, he was a game worse minus 16, right? And then the thing that was not really disturbing, but the thing that really makes you wonder is after the game, when Jock Vine was asked about why Ben wasn't in there, I'm gonna read his quote to you. His quote is kind of crazy. It kind of like, so what's really going on, coach? So Jock is asked why wasn't Ben in the game. So if you're thinking about being aggressive, you will be aggressive. If you think about being a good teammate, you will be a good teammate. If you think about competing and playing hard, you will do these things. You become what you think about. So it sounds like the coach is calling his heart into question, like saying he ain't competing, right? But then we're looking at it, and I'm like, yo, he's playing good. You think he's playing good, but the coach didn't even have the confidence to put him in there late in the last 8 minutes, last 9 minutes, and that's what he said. That was his response to him not playing. So to me, that's kind of alarming. But the one thing I will say, I gotta give Jock Vaughn credit, because Brett Brown should have done that a long time ago in regards to bench and Ben. And all that does is you can either go two ways. You're going to quit, or you're going to get tired of people asking you why you ain't playing in the end of the games. And then you got to come out and play. And it just seems like Jock Vaughn is kind of sort of like, yo, he going to have to come out and play if he want to play. You could quit all you want.
I thought Brett Brown should have done it also. Different situations, to be fair, because of the franchise tag that's on Simmons as a cornerstone here with he and Embiid there. He's third in line behind Durant and Irving, but still a key component to what they do. And we have more data, more examples of things of how to do this, and seeing his lack of aggression. But you're absolutely right. It should have been done. And look, same thing with Doc Rivers. When you talk about who should have done that also. Remember, Doc Rivers scoffed at the media when asked to sit Ben Simmons later in the game. It just was what it was. And nobody was wrong.
Yeah.
It was an honest question that needed to be asked. And you give Doc credit for standing up for his guy. However, we, again, being around him for so long, knew what the examples were of a late situation in a game where you're trying to keep the ball out of his hands. Although you have him on the floor, you keep the ball out of his hands because he didn't want to get fouled. It wasn't something he was interested in doing and going to the free throw line. And if you remember, Scott Brooks in that same playoff series played Hacker Ben in that Washington Wizards series before they were eliminated, because they wanted to get back into the game. They slowed the game down. They got back into it. And that's the very reason. But you're right. Jock Vaughn deciding to sit him, he should sit him, because the lack of aggression is appalling at this point. The one thing that I always said when he was here for a long time, I think it was dating back to 2017, 2018, where it was really, really apparent that he wasn't going to do it. And the one thing that I would say was aggressive Ben Simmons is the best Ben Simmons. It became a thing in our city amongst Sixer fans. I even had one person, a media person, copy it, and I should have copywritten it because he stole it and tried to claim it as his. But that's not the point. That's what it was. It was real simple. Aggressive Ben Simmons is the best Ben Simmons. And while it was a knock, it wasn't a knock. It was just, dude, put your head down and go. Because if you do that, you're 6'10", as you said, one of the fastest big men in the league, and you got the ball in your hands while you're doing it. They're gonna have to make a decision. And sometimes it is going to be fouling you, and you have to go to the free throw line and make those. And I remember the 1 month, Keith, that he was so good for it wasn't one. It was like 2 months. He was like 74% from the free throw line because he was confident in what he was doing. And to see and to read some of the stuff from the Nets people who covered the team, the Nets fans who were having their backup and, their Ben Simmons blinders on. And I understand, because they had, a new player, third piece to their stars, and they wanted to stand up for their player. They see it now, because there was a lot of trade Ben Simmons. You talking about the crowd that was chanting for him in the arena last night. There were plenty of them when they finally got to see who Ben Simmons has become and some of the frustrating parts about him, that get him out of here, right away. And talking about Sixer fans and how rough they were on him, they have become the same type of fan when it comes to Ben Simmons. So that's their problem, but, it's always going to be something when the Sixers and the Nets face off, Keith. So we can't get away from it. As much as we may want to, we can't get away from it. But it was a fun game. As you mentioned, it was a fun atmosphere. It lived up to the hype, the expectation, although the points weren't there in general. It was fun. it was fun, and it was fun viewing it from back at the studio. I hope everybody who were not able to hang out in the arena with you still were able to listen to it on the radio, watch it on television, and enjoy the matchup between those two teams, because it was a fun one. We thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. For your next listen, your second listen, check out Locked On NBA. Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA, and every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. Is free and available wherever you get your podcast. And we'll be back tomorrow to discuss a little bit more as we get ready for the Sixers and the Nuggets, another game for rivalry week. Joel Embiid, Keith, needing to check his emotions a little bit because Nikola Jokic is coming to town.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy, right? This, I mean, like, yeah. What they say, you get out of the such and such and into the pan, whatever it is. I forget. I forget the saying. Yeah,
that's okay. We know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So So I mean, but I'm looking forward to it.
It should be a fun one. Well, mind letting the good folks know where they can find us.
Look, like D always says, you can find us free and available wherever you get your podcast. But see, that's the same thing for Locked On NBA, same thing for Locked On 76ers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Man, they gave my man D the night off tonight, so he
got the night off, man. Flyers taking over the radio tonight.
Okay, so D has the night off, so you can still listen to the show 97.5 if you want to, but make sure when he comes back that you listen to him.
6 o'clock on Friday.
6 o'clock on Friday. But what you need to do is you need to follow my man on Twitter at Devon G975. Follow me on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. You can read my articles in the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com.
Absolutely. Well, Keith, man, I can't wait to talk tomorrow as we preview the Sixers and the Nuggets. We'll do that tomorrow, but right now, have a good rest of your day, man. Enjoy it.
Same, bro. Same to you, my man. Thanks,
man.
Peace.